Okay, so we're going to continue Hilchos Mikvaot Siman Reish Aleph. What I think we should do now is just a little bit of a review of certain details, important halachas that concern the actual engineering of a mikveh, especially when building it with all kinds of pipes. We're being more or less introduced to the concept of kelim that are mekabel tumah, even though we hopefully know a little bit about that from before, from elsewhere. But there's a little bit of a difference as to the criteria of what makes a keli that is mekabel tumah versus a keli that it has a base kibul, but it's considered a vessel for purposes of taking mayim and making it mayim she'uvim. In other words, the halachas, the criteria for the two of them are not the same. So we'll talk a little bit more about that going into the seifim of Lamed Dalet through Lamed Vav and maybe even all the way to Mem. Before we go to that, just a little bit of a review of last shiur concerning the halacha of wine. In Seif Chav Tes, the Ramah brought down that a mikveh choser, a mikveh that does not have the 40 sa'ah yet, shenafal sham yain, that wine fell in, v'nishtane mar'eu, so the color changed of the mikveh, doesn't have any more the color of water, and then nafal sham gimel lugim mayim she'uvim, you had 3 lugim of water that is she'uvim falling into the mikveh. So ordinarily gimel lugim invalidates a mikveh that does not yet contain 40 sa'ah. But here we say Einon Poisnim, that we're not going to pass out this mikveh, even though 3 lugin of she'uvim fell in there. It's a mikveh chaser because it's no longer a mikveh that looks like water. So the 3 lugin of real water falling into a mikveh that's chaser. However, this mikveh chaser does not look like water because of the wine that fell in there. The 3 lugin of mayim she'uvim will not invalidate it. Therefore, you cannot immerse in it yet. The color is not the color of water. And it's a mikveh choser as well. Once you complete the mikveh with the required amount of mayim shedim, and v'chozar lemare mayim, and the coloration goes back to the natural color of water, then it's kshera, then it's kosher. The question that you raised was about, does the wine count? Does any of the wine count? Even though ordinarily wine is not mashlim a mikveh, here we're talking about that he was mashlim it later. Perhaps this is a little bit different. In other words, there was wine that changed the color, and now we're being mashlim everything. But we want to know the question.
We're being mashlim everything.
We were being mashlim the mikveh to the minimal requirement of 40 sa'ah.
So you're adding actual water then?
Yes, that's correct, yeah. So this question really is discussed by the Shach. The Shach brings down here, v'hishlim mikveh das Ravid. Ravid's opinion is that hayayin shenofa betchila, the wine that fell earlier on, gam kin mitzaref lehashlim. You can include that when you're being mashlim it to 40 sa'ah. Habeis Yosef kosav shemedivra Rash v'Rambam nire sheinu mitzaref. That it appears from the Rash and the Rambam that the wine would not contribute at all. B'chini das Rav. So the Shach says the Rambam would probably agree with that too. That you cannot include any of the wine that was there towards the minimal requirement of 40 sa'ah. Okay, so that's a very interesting nakuda over here. Can we include it at all? Because we are already...
So it doesn't factor in at all.
Yes.
The quantity of wine has to...
According to the
add water that includes also the quantity of wine.
Right.
The volume of
because
wine.
We did say before that there are certain liquids that are not maile. In other words, they don't contribute at all, and they don't pass all the mikveh. And really, wine is one of them. So to hear that the circumstances are a little bit different, we're not completing the mikveh with the wine. It just that happens to be that there was some wine from before that got mixed with the water. We're going to use water to complete the mikveh. So that's the question. Can we count that which had fallen earlier, or do we need to add only water? So Beis Yosef says it can only be water. You cannot use that wine.
So do the Ashkenazim follow from the Ravid, or?
No, so that's just one opinion, the Ravid. So we would be machmer, more likely than not, to use only water. Okay. Then we went on to Sif Lamed Gimel. Well, we spoke actually before that about the various other ways of making a mikveh when you don't have water. And that was in Sif Lamed Aleph, and Lamed Beis, if you recall, snow, hail, and even the soft mud. There you had you had two questions. First of all, can you make a mikveh out of it? We're not talking about making the entire mikveh out of the mud, but there are times where you would possibly entertain the idea of making an entire mikveh from shelig or from ice. And then the question was about she'uvim too. Whether you're transporting it in a truck, whether that transport would render it she'uvim. So the question is, can the mikveh be made out of it? And the means to transport it, would there be any problem in how you transport it? Because as you're transporting it, shelig is not water. Eventually that shelig is going to melt. So in the interim, what's the status of that shelig regarding its transport? Would that pose any problem? So the Mechaber pretty much says you can use the shelig, you can use the borot, you can use all this material, and even the teat, which is a little bit thick, but it is a little bit soft enough that you can pour it. Ain't she'iva. We said that she'iva will not passel in them. Shimshav me'elu lemikveh achos lo pasluhu. Not only that, he says that even if you made the whole mikveh of shelig or kfor, in that he holds you can make the entire mikveh out of shelig or kfor. Or borot sheheviu bekli v'asam mikveh kosher, it would be kosher. Okay. The Ma'isa, we would have to wait until that snow melts, becomes water, for it to be practical for purposes of tefillah. Then there was a question about mikveh shov shehiglid, if the water is froze, that it somehow is metarit mishum mayim she'uvim. We're machmer, the Chazon Ish says at least that we don't do it this way. We don't use water that was mayim she'uvim that froze. That the freezing of the water does not undo, according to Chazon Ish, we're machmer that it does not undo the status of mayim she'uvim. So what is the Mechaber actually then saying? Mikveh shov shehiglid tohor b'shum mayim she'uvim nimochu kosher likavos. So what is he actually adding by the words that once it melts, it's kosher likavos, which is not the typical term used, that it's kosher to be toivelin. So basically we have three shitas on it. This is, by the way, I didn't take it from the Tosefta. We have the Rosh that says that the kavanah over here is that in this kind of a mikveh, it's kosher litvol boy. Very simple. In other words, once the water is defrost, it's perfectly kosher. The smag, at least according to the second shot in the smag, he says that we're not dealing here with a situation where the mayim are she'uvim, and therefore, if you add now the 40 se'ah of Megeshamim, it's okay. What does this tell you? That we're dealing with something in between. It's a special, unique status granted to this water that melted. It's not she'uvim, but neither, according to the second chapter in Smag, neither is it kosher 100% to immerse it, and you would have to add the required 40 se'ah on top of it. So it's like a din emtsoi. It's not she'uvim, but it's not kosher.
Is the Smag saying that the water was originally she'uvim?
Yeah, we're talking about that. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Comes along the Gra in his Pirush on the Tosefta and says that kosher likavos means that you can complete it with Megeshamim until it is 40 se'ah. So whatever water is melted there is okay, can be used, but once you've completed it to 40 se'ah. So the question is, how much would you have to have? Would you have to have roiv or not? But that's how he understands the kosher that he covers. That to complete it to 40 so it would be okay. But you wouldn't want, or you couldn't really make an entire mikveh of this water, of this kind of melted water. Well, halacha l'maaseh, the Shuchan Aruch just says very simple. He follows the rush. It's kosher to be toivel in it, and the Shach says the same. So we have, again, the Chazon Ish who's machmir, but we can always refer to this halacha, to the Shitas Arosh, if we need to. And in Lamed Gimel, we just briefly went over the concept of any creature that is formed in water, shetchilas briyoso min hamayim, that technically you would be able to be toivel in it. It would not be in any ways chatzitza or anything. It's just pretty much comes down to being from water, and somehow if it dissolves, it's back to water. And even maybe if it's not completely dissolved yet, according to the way some understand it, because it's briyoso min hamayim, it comes from water, technically it's like water. And I don't think this is really going to be too relevant, but if the Mechaber brought it down, I have a feeling that it may, at times, it may need to be considered, perhaps if it forms a chatzitza maybe, or if in other words, how do we treat this if it's in the mikveh too, especially if it's a certain amount, So I don't know if we really need to get into it too much. All right. The next se'ifim, however, are very, very relevant, very important, and that has more to do with the actual building of a mikveh. Building of a mikveh is not so simple, if you want to do it right. The question is right, does that right mean with all the chumras? Because you will find a lot of mikvahs are built with many, many chumras. Or does right just mean as long as it's okay, as long as it's kosher, b'diavad, according to some opinions. So it all depends on the circumstances of where you are. If you're in Russia, you don't have the means, you don't have the money. Where is it exactly? Is there enough rainwater? Here, however, we're not so much concerned with the type of liquid. We're assuming that you're going to have the rainwater somehow. It's the construction of the mikveh that has to be done right. Otherwise, there may be a chashash, there may be the issue of mayim she'uvim being collected in the process. Here you're spending a lot of money making a very beautiful mikveh of the most expensive tile. You want to make it look good. You want to draw people to come there. But if the piping, the water that somehow is transporting, enabling the rainwater to come in, is not done in the proper manner, it could ruin the mikveh. Now that's not the big expense. The big expense is obviously the mikveh itself, what the water collects. Nonetheless, you may have to break it up. There's a lot of things that if they're not done right with the proper halachas, with guidance of an experienced mikveh maker, it could turn out to be not a kosher mikveh. Whether it's a mikveh for kalim, or if it's a mikveh for women, which is a lot more. It's a lot more serious. Yes, Ina.
Which sif are you in?
Sif Lamed Aleph. So we covered that a little bit last time, but we'll go into it again so we can better understand the next seifim. So the Mechaber says, "En hakli choshev lifsol hamayim shebo mishum she'iva elam ken hu roi lekabel kodem sheikvareno v'shitmaleh ledat." So he tells us, without elaborating too much, elaboration comes later, that a keli will not passel a mikveh unless it complies with two criteria. In other words, for the water in the keli to be mayim she'uvim. Number one, it has to be royu lekabel kodem sheikvareno. If it's something that's going to become part of the mikveh, it's not a bucket that you can, obviously that we know, but it's going to be built into the mikveh because we're building a mikveh right now. If this keli has the status of a keli from before it's built in, it's a pipe, it's a plastic, it's a metal, whatever it is right now. We're not going to even talk about material yet because some materials are mekabel too and some are not. But let's assume that it's it's Mekabel Tumah perhaps, but it has to be a keli. It can't just be a flat piece of metal. It has to have a shem, a status of a keli, from before you attach it. So this becomes very important when you're dealing with all kinds of plumbing pipes, those that connect the pipes, brackets of all sorts, or I should say not brackets, but elbows. Now what's so bad about an elbow? Now you know what an elbow is with plumbing. You know, sometimes the angle that's required to transport the water is an elbow because of just the way it's constructed.
In other words, it constricts the movement of the water and forces it into one direction.
Well, it's more a problem here of being mekabel water temporarily at the point where it's changing direction. Right. Mm-hmm. So you're right, it is constricting in a sense.
But it's the purpose. The purpose is not to be mekabel water.
Right. That's a very good point. What he just said is, the purpose of it is not to be mekabel. That's what Mechaber says here. That these two criteria are important to make it possible for sure. In other words, it's royal kabel from before it was connected to the mikveh, because once you connect the keli to the mikveh, it becomes part of the ground. So it's not so much of a problem. But if before you connect it, it's already a keli, it doesn't help me too much that you're connecting it later to the mikveh. So it has to have had already a status of a keli. Number two, it has to be sheit malele da'at, that you intentionally want the waters to collect there. The as poisel, and then it would passel imuk.
You just used
The as poisel.
You just used the word collect.
Yes.
But you were speaking about an elbow.
A what?
An elbow.
Yes.
You're saying collect midat.
Right.
You know, by an elbow, the intention, in other words, midat, would not be for the water.
Exactly. So an elbow may not be a problem according to some. Exactly. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to speak to someone who's going to be machmir with all the shitas, he's going to find you a shita of why an elbow may be a problem too. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next seifim, of depending on from what material it's made, how much of an elbow, or how much of an angle, or how much of a niche in a flat surface, a niche, even a little niche, a dent, would pose a problem. So if it's not completely flattened, it could collect somewhere temporarily, and that somewhere, that niche, that hole, that filter even, as the water is going through it and sifting out any impurities, it may be a problem. So these are the two conditions to make it possible. Now the Mechaber says, Bein imhu kli godol, whether it's a very big keli, amachzik arboim som belachshem kurayim beyovesh. In other words, it's a large amount. Therefore, it's such a kli is not mekabel tuma. Well, what did we say before? This is not about being mekabel tuma necessarily. This is about being a keli for mayim she'uvim purposes. So even if it's a big keli, machzik arboim som belachshem kurayim in yovesh, which is a dry amount. Beinu kli kotat biyoyse, which is also not mekabatum if it's very, very small keli. But filohim klei gelolim, made out of, manure. Klei avonim, stone, klei adoma, of earth. So here we see that it has nothing really to do with mekabel tum or not, even though that's also important. Here, we're concerned now with if this is a keli or not, prior to being attached to the mikveh. So that was Seif Lamedalad, where he briefly told us what will passel the mikveh, what kind of a clay will passel it. And now we're going to see that there are situations where, even though it appears to be a real keli somewhat, it will not passel the mikveh because of the way it's standing or the way it's being used. So that's what Sif Lamed Hey is all about. So let's see Sif Lamed Hey. Perhaps we'll read it inside first. Hameniach tabla. Tachat hatzinor. So we're talking about a tabla. What's a tabla? A tabla is like a table. In other words, a flat surface. It could be a cutting board, like a tablet, Microsoft tablet, or
You have to be careful with these ideas these days. If you talk to the wrong people.
Right. So we're talking about a tabla. Right now, we don't know about material. All we know is that it serves some purpose, and he puts it meniach tabla tachat hatzinor, right underneath the pipe that's leading to the mikveh, etzel mikveh. And what's the purpose of this tabla? It helps. Kedei sheyiplu mimena hamayim lamikveh. It helps. Perhaps the tzinor doesn't come directly to the mikveh. Maybe you need to extend. You want, there's other reasons why you would want to put a tabla there, but let's say you want the water simply to reach the mikveh from the pipe. So you put it there, you put it underneath the pipe, and it leads to the mikveh. Kedei sheyiplu mimena hamayim lamikveh. Now, tabla could be flat, completely flat, or you could have safot, or as it's called in another way, lizvaz. This tabla can have edges, or you can call it a rim, if you prefer. Mm-hmm. An elevated rim, surrounding it, encircling it. So you put the tabla tachat hatzinor etzel hamikveh kedei sheyiplu mimena hamayim lamikveh. Im yesh la arba safot, if it has 4 edges, 4 sides of rims, which means that shereuya lekabel hamayim, it can actually collect the water. It can hold the water because it has safot. It's not flat. Poselet, then it passels. Vim lav, if it does not have the 4 edges or rims, ena poselet, it does not passel. It can't hold water. It doesn't really have the status of a keli. Now, what about if he did not just put the tabla underneath the tzinor, but zok for al tzido lidoach? Let's say he put it on the side. He wanted to rinse it, wash it down. So he put it on an angle. Then afilu yesh la safot, even if it has edges all around a rim, eina poselet, it would not passel. Why? Even though it has edges, kivan sheina omedet binyan shuruya lekabed, it's not standing in such a way where it is able to collect the water. It's standing up vertically. So even though it does have a shame of a keli, the way it's standing, it cannot collect water. So even though the water is traveling through it, it's okay, but not so quick. There's one very important condition that the Mechaber emphasizes over here, and that is avalim ein hamayim. Uchegoin shamayim reuyim lovo lamikveh zulasa. We're talking about in a situation where the waters can reach the mikveh even without this tabla being there. This tabla is not facilitating the waters from getting to the mikveh. Even without the tabla there, the waters can reach the mikveh. But if the waters could not reach the mikveh without the help of this tabla, then it makes no difference that he put it up vertically. Afilu zokfo al tzida, even if he put it vertically on its side, or kofo al piha, or he turned it upside down, so there's no suffix, there's no edges. Poiseles, it's still possible. What we see here, and what we will see a lot more later, where he explains this concept, is that it's not only about a keli that can collect water that would pose a problem. There's a certain condition in creating a mikveh that haviyosa, its formation, the formation of the 40 se'ah. In other words, we're starting from scratch to make a mikveh. When you start from scratch, you want it to be done haviyosa, you want it to be formed betahara, without the involving anything that is mekabel tuma. So that's where it will make a little bit of a difference whether something is mekabel tuma or not. You want the haviyosa betahara, you want the formation of a mikveh. Forget about the concept of she'uvim right now, because this is not she'uvim. Here we're not talking about a situation where the waters are collecting. On the contrary, he put it upside down. I mean, it's flat. Yes, but the waters would not be able to reach the mikveh without it. Well, so what? Well, we were starting a mikveh from scratch. We want it to be done right. We want the haviyos, the formation, to be betahara. So it all depends on what's there. Well, what's there in this case is a tavla. The makor of this din is from the Mishnah there, that says that if you're, as the Rosh actually explains, that a tavla with 3 lizbezin is not considered the base kibble. So that we understand, 3 sides is not considered a vessel to collect water. So even though you're putting that tabla of 3 lizbezin in such a way that it could collect a little bit of water, still it's okay because it's not a keli. It's not called the base kibble. So as far as the problem of maim she'uvim, or of collecting water in a base kibble, this is not a base kibble. Now, when you have 4 levazbezin, then yes, that can pass through the mikveh for 2 reasons. So reason number 1, we know, is because of maim she'uvim. If you put a keli that has the 4 leaves with the 4 edges in such a way where the waters can actually collect there, that they should enter from there to the mikveh, it's simple. However, if something is zokuf, if something is standing upright, that would be a little bit different. It wouldn't collect the water. So that's why the Mechaber says, Zokfa al tzida lidoach, even if it has sofos, eino poiselos. Because it's not standing. It's not being placed in such a way where waters will collect there. So even though this is a real keli, it's not going to collect. As long as you know for sure it's not going to collect, then technically it's okay. So the first problem with this kelim, as we said, is are they collecting water or not? Well, in order for it to collect water, it has to have all the edges, and it has to be sitting or placed in such a way where waters will actually collect. Then we have what I just said, the second din of haviyoso alidei tahara, which we're going to see later on in Sif Memches. That problem, or that requirement, I should say, of haviyoso betahara, it doesn't help therefore the position of how you place that tabla. Even if you it's standing up and it cannot collect water, it will not help. So what did the Mechaber tell us here? Exactly that if the waters cannot reach the mikveh without that tabla standing up vertically, then it would be a problem too. Why? Obviously he's referring to another din that he didn't tell us too much about. Right? He doesn't explain here. All he says that if the waters can't reach the mikveh without the help of this tabla, even if you put it upside down, in other words, there's no way for any waters to collect. Poiseles. Why? Well, I'm already letting you know in advance what the issue is. It has to do with the second criteria or requirement of a mikveh's formation should be betahara. And here there's a psul, that the havaya of the mikveh is through a kli that's mekabel tuma. So that's what the issue here is. The Chazon Ish explains here, very interesting. There's a lot of discussion about this havayoso betahara. The Chazon Ish here says that on this tabla that he put up vertically, He's only talking about a tabla that the mayim, the water, are not nachim at all. In other words, when you're putting a tabla vertically, it has to be talking about a tabla that the waters do not collect at all. They're not stationary even for a little bit. Then he says, with that in mind, that the waters are not going to be there stationary at all, then you could say that that's the kavanah of what the Rosh says, that without the tavla, in other words, if the waters would reach the mikveh anyway. All right, but if you put the tavla next to the tzinor, where the waters are going to enter it first before they reach the mikveh, in that case, you're always going to have a situation of havayoson is al yedei mekabel tuma. In other words, that will not work. If you put it right next to where the pipe is, in order for the waters to enter it first before they reach the mikveh. It has to be, the Chazon Ish explains, in order to accept this differentiation of what the Rosh says, had it would reach the mikveh or not reach the mikveh, in other words, is it facilitating or not, this only makes a difference when the waters do not collect at all, do not stand even momentarily. Then it's okay. Without it, it wouldn't reach the mikveh. Okay, then it's okay. Just, it's fine. But if you're putting it in such a place where the tzinor, the pipe, the water going through the pipe is going to enter it first before it goes to the mikveh, then there's always going to be a problem. That the formation of the mikveh is happening through a keli that is mekabel tuba. And that cannot be done. What about pshutei kli'etz? You don't see it here, but we're going to talk a little bit more about pipes later on. And this is an interesting subject, because a pipe does have, edges. Most pipes that we're familiar with are circular, round, and they can hold water. And the question is about wooden pipes, because there's something about pshutei kli'etz. Pshutei kli'etz means a plank of wood that is flat. And when you learn about Hilchos Tumah V'Tahara on kelim, material kelim, pshutei kli'etz are not mekabel tumah, midiraisa. They're planks. They don't have a status of a kli yet. They eventually will be used to make a table, a chair, or a real vessel. And then, of course, since they're being made into something, or they have been made into something, then of course, even though it's wood, it is mekabel tumah. So the Tur, in Mechaber doesn't bring this down over here, and that's why you're going to see that there's a lot of questions about this, because apparently certain things are allowed and certain things are not allowed, and we want to know what the difference is. So the Tur brings down like this. Let me see if I wrote it down here. That if the tabla is of eitz, if the tabla is made out of wood, not made out of other materials, because there will be a difference. We will see if something is made out of glass, something is made out of cheres, earthenware, porcelain, and the like. All of that makes a little bit of a difference if they actually collect a little bit of water. But the Tur here says that regarding the tabla, if the tabla is of wood, even though you're rinsing it, if that's all you intend to do is to rinse it, it has a psul of havayoso al yedei dover mekabel tuma, even if it doesn't have any edges to it. It's still mekabel tuma. Midrabanan, at least midrabanan, that it's mekabel tuma. So the Beis Yosef asked the question, but wait a minute, if this tablet does not have an edge, then it's a real pshutei kli'etz. In a real pshutei kli'etz is not mekabel tuma. So again, the Tur did not say anything about pshutei kli'etz. The Tur just says that if the tabla is of wood, even though you're putting it vertically to rinse it out, it would have a psul of havayos al yedei dover mekabel tuma, even if it doesn't have a sofa. So on that, Beis Yosef says, but wait a minute, if it does not have a sofa, then it has a status of a pshutei kli'etz, and a pshutei kli'etz is not mekabel tuma. So he gives two tirutzim. Tirutz number one, pshutei eitz are mekabel tuma after all midirabanan. Okay, that's one teretz, and since they're mekabel tuma midirabanan, that is why if it's made out of eitz, it would be a problem if it's made out of wood. The Taz asks on this, and the Shach agrees that it's a good question too. Wait a minute, according to this answer of the Beis Yosef that pshutei kli'etz are going to be a problem because they're metame midirabanan, at least midirabanan, then why do we allow later on pipes that are made out of wood? Pipes that are made out of wood should also pass the mikveh. they're not any better than pshutei kli eitz, or are they? Very good question, because later on we will see that pipes that are made of wood could be acceptable. So you understand the question? According to this teretz, that pshutei kli eitz are metame midrabanan, and that is why this tabla is a problem, then why are you going to later permit pipes that are made out of wood? They shouldn't be any better. So before we get to the answer to that, the second answer, the second teretz, the Basar says that we're talking about a tavla that originally had edges, but they were broken. The tabla itself did not break. So in this case, it is mekabel tuma. That's just his second answer. I like the Bach's explanation. The Bach says that pshutei kli eitz, that the din of pshutei kli eitz, that is not metame, is only when they were not designated for a particular melacha. You know, when you chop down wood and you prepare them for lumber to be used in construction, I mean, it's still eitz. In other words, you haven't really designated, you haven't put it to use, you haven't decided how you're going to make it or into what you're going to make it exactly. They're ready to be used for construction. That's all you know. That these pieces of wood can be used for construction. Nothing more than that. Then they're not mekabel tuma. But when you're miyached them for a melacha, like to make a table, a chair, then they are mekabel tuma. That's pshat in pshutei kli eitz that are metame midrabanan. I looked it up in the Aruch HaShulchan. I wanted to see what he says about this. And he says pretty much the same thing, I think. That a tzinor, a pipe made out of eitz, is really, in fact, worse than a tabla. In other words, that is why it's not mekabel tuma. A tabla is already something that is made specifically to be used for a purpose, that man benefits from, like a table or a chair. Whereas the pipe doesn't really have that designation yet. And therefore, it's less of a problem than a tabla. So here, when we're talking about a tabla, we're not just talking about a piece of wood. We're talking about something like a table that has a flat surface that has been made into something that is useful, even though it's flat. So, because we said, even though you turn it over. And that is why this one, the halacha over here, would be different than just plain pipes made out of wood. So, if you're wondering about wood, about the issue of pshutei kli eitz, there would be a difference. It would all depend what is the real status of that pshutei kli eitz, like the Bach said. Has it been made into something, or is it just plain piece of wood? That serves, obviously it serves a purpose, but it's not a complete keli yet, in the way it's fashioned out and what it's providing. So tabla will be more chomer than the tzinor later on. I thought that Aruch HaShulchan, the Bach, pretty much explains it, even though some may question this. I think that's good enough of an explanation. That here, since the requirement is also that it should be haviyoso b'tahara, you can't therefore put something that is mekabel tuma. So if the waters, like the Mechaber said, would not reach the mikveh without it, even if you put it upside down, it would be poiselis. All right, maybe just briefly we'll look at the next few seifim. Tzinor, a pipe, she'ein lo dalet safot, that does not have four corners, four edges, eino choshuv kli, it's not considered a keli. We're talking about a pipe now. V'royu lahavi al yodo imayim lemikveh, you can actually use it to transport water directly to the mikveh. The only problem that you may have, however, is imchokak bo guma. So before we talk about chokak bo guma, all we've said so far is that a keli, in order for it to be a keli and be a problem, it has to have had the name of a keli before it was attached to the mikveh, to the ground. Therefore, if you have something that's in the ground already, built into the ground, and then you fashion it into something that looks like a keli, it's not a keli. It's part of the ground. Right? So that's pretty much we've covered before. It has to be that it had the status of a keli before it was attached. Here, however, we're still talking about something independent of the mikveh, separate. It's tzinor, a pipe. If it does not have the 4 sofos, it's not a kli. You can use it. But even this one, if you made a niche, right, an area that is deep, a recess, even small, before you were koveated into the ground, if it's made out of wood, even if the niche only holds just a little bit, Nase kula al yodoi kli, the whole entire pipe becomes a kli because of that little area that is a niche. The kol hamayim she'ovrim olav, and all the waters that will go by it, chashuvim she'uvim, will be rendered she'uvim. Look what a problem this niche caused. If just one spot in this pipe can receive or collect a little bit of water, it's not completely flat, it would be a problem. You see how they have to be careful? If it's made out of earthenware, remember the pipes, you still see them around here, the sewer pipes, made out of clay. Well, that's what this is. If it's made out of cheres, it would not pass unless it holds a revi'it, which is a larger amount. If pebbles or off or dirt fell into the guma, that's not that in itself will not make it back into a keli that is not mekabel. It's not a stima that does not fill the gap. That's not considered the filling to be mevatel for Torah's Kabbalah, unless elam can you obviously unless it's very, very tightly inside where it basically cancels out or eliminates that niche. What about a silon? Silon is also like a little canal. Shutzar mikan umikan. It's narrow on the two ends. V'rachav be'emtza, and it's wider in the middle. So it's like you're causing the water to temporarily stop, even though it's momentarily in the middle because of the width. Because this is not considered a kabbalah. It was a kli to pass because of this the mikveh. In other words, the fact, we're not talking about something very unusual shape. Here we're just talking about that it's completely flat, but it's just wider in the middle. In other words, it's narrow on both ends, wider in the middle, so the waters are temporarily like collecting there, but they're not collecting. They're just, I guess, spending more time there, a few more seconds before they go on, because of the way the pressure works. So the water stopping a little bit there, but not really collected, is not a problem. That's why he says here, the Ramah says, L'chein mutar lasos mikvois. Therefore, you're allowed to make mikvahs alidei tzinoros v'silonos. You can use those kinds of pipes in canals, like gutters, right? Shel eitz, made out of wood, shemevi'in mayim min nahar, that bring water directly from the river, or shar mayan, or from a mayan, from a spring. Ela mikveh. They in themselves do not present a problem. Or, he says, what we have today, tzinorot shel hagagot, the gutters, those pipes that come down from the roof, where the rain collects. We don't really have to be concerned. Maybe in the meantime, even though they're flat, some guma, some niche was formed in them because of so much water and precipitation, that with time, a little hole or dent or niche was formed. Umekablim, and now it's receiving a little water. Because that's not called Kabbalah. Why not? Even if it really did form a guma, you know why it's not a problem? Man did not intentionally make the guma. If with time, because of the power of the water, it makes a little bit of a niche, that's not a problem. And if the waters come to the tzinor, this is a very interesting scenario. I don't know what they called exactly, but they are water wheels. You've seen them, remember? That they transport the water. But in the meantime, in this wheel, there are kelim that are collecting the water as they go along, as the water is streaming down from one place to another. These galgalim, or these tzinorot, or kelim I should say, that are kvuim bagalgal, if they have a hole, then it's okay. So they're coming through these kelim, they're kvuim the galgal in the wheel, but heim nekuvim, they have a hole. It's not a real kli. You can't leave water there for too long. It's going to spill out. Then mutar little when you can actually immerse in it, if it would have mem se'ah b'mikveh, im yesh mem se'ah b'mikveh. Aval im ein ba mem se'ah, then obviously you cannot be toivel in it, because what about being a connection to the nahar where it's coming from? No, that's also not good. The lo mikre chibur nahar, this in itself will not be considered a connection to the nahar.
Well, wait, you could have one of these water wheels,
right?
Mm-hmm. That takes the water out of the river.
Right.
You put a little hole in the bottom.
Right.
So much more water is coming in as it turns around, but very little is coming out.
Right.
At the bottom, and it's pouring it as it gets to the top into a swimming pool or something.
Right. Exactly.
Become a mikvah.
Sure. So that's what he's saying. Remember,
this is not.
No. This is okay. There's two ideas here. The idea number one is Maim Shuvim. It has a hole.
So you're right. So
that's resolved. As far as connecting to the mikveh, if you don't have enough Maim where this is, it's not a real connection. So connections we'll talk about later.
So
the conditions for making a connection to the river, to the Mayan, are different than making this a keli that is not a keli by having a hole.
So this is not a keli.
It's not a keli for purposes of Maim She'uvim.
Right.
So therefore you can use this way of transporting the water to the mikveh. But as far as being toivel in it, if it does not have memso and thinking that, well, it's connected to the water where it's coming from, no, it's not.
Because it's separate buckets.
Yeah.
There's separate buckets on the wheel.
Right.
That's why it's not connected.
Yeah.
As it pulls out of the water, it's not. But you could fill a mikveh using this method, so long as there's a hole in the buckets.
Yeah.
Is that what he's saying?
Well, the hole in the bucket would enable you to transport the water.
And put it into a mikveh.
It's transporting it. Yeah, it's transporting it. Exactly. That's what it's saying here. Sure. But to immerse there in that place, wherever it is, that there's not enough 40 se'ah, but thinking that it's okay because it's connected to the nahar, that is not enough of a connection. Okay, and that we'll talk a little bit more next week, I think, in why that is so. Perhaps we'll elaborate more then. I briefly mentioned it last time that if you have tile with which you cover the roof, the same thing with these tiles that cover the roofs, even though they may have niches, they may be built in such a way where they can collect temporarily the water, they can hold it for whatever, a certain amount of time. They're not going to pass through the mikveh, the water's coming down through them, because they were not intended this way. They were not made lekabel bahem. So it's okay. Also, if you put a sack or some sort of bag underneath the pipe, they have holes. The water is traveling through them, will not pass on the mikveh. Even though it's not a big hole, the Shach explains.
You're talking about a hole in the bag?
It has a lot of holes. It's perforated in the bag. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Shach says is afal pishaim bohem nekev achat kishvoferet anod. It has nekovim harbe. It cannot hold the water, so it's not considered lo chashiva beis kibul for it to be a problem of she'uvim. Then you have in Sif Lametet, you have zeh she'omru shekol she'eno oisu lekabel esamayim eno poisus hamikvah. That which we said, the halacha that we said, that if it's not also not made to be mekabel esamayim, that it's not posted the mikveh. Lo omru, they didn't say that look shenoflu mesochen le mikveh me'atzmo. That's if they fell there on their own. But if man is involved in placing the water into them, then it is poisel. In other words, even though it's not also lekabel as a mayim. They were not made to accept, to collect water, but if man uses them to collect water, to bring him to the mikveh, it is poisel, because it involves man. Shekol al yedei odom, even if man was not directly involved, but he was involved. For example, afilu zilef beyodo v'beraglo, he squirted somehow with his hands and his feet. Afilu oiver b'mayim, he was going through the water, v'nizdalfu meleim, the water just squirted out from his feet, beraglo v'lemikveh, paslu, it's possible. Human intervention would disqualify this water. However, when it went through his feet, what if it's the car, you're traveling by car and the wheels, sometimes there's, in those days they had behemoths. We still have behemoths today, but from the animal, they were not machmer, lo paslu. Even though he's riding on it, they were squirted out. That's not the same as though he would be doing it himself with his own feet. There's different opinions about this, but that's where human intervention would be an issue. That's what we said, that there are maybe some materials or some kalim which are not really kalim, like tiles on the roof. They were never really intended to collect water, and somehow the waters collect there. It's okay because they were not intended to collect water. But once you have human intervention, even in the least form of human intervention, in other words, he's just walking through the water and somehow that water was mezalef through his feet or through his hand, then that would pass on the mikveh. So this Hashem will explain a little bit more next week.